Aloha champions, and welcome back to this Monday edition of our social studies video. In this chapter we are going to be finding places on a map. We've learned about lines of latitude and longitude and learned about some of the key features of maps, including compass roses, map scales, and map keys that help us to interpret what we're reading when we're looking at a map. Our big question for today's video is we want to know if coordinates include a unit of measure called a degree. What does a degree measure? And it's not like your temperature degrees that measure how warm or cold something is. These measure a length of distance between one point and another. But without further ado, let's get into Chapter 3, Finding a Place on a Map. Crossing the United States back in the 1860s, building the Transcontinental Railroad was back-breaking work. The workers didn't have any modern equipment. They used hammers, shovels, and explosives to move earth and rock, and they carried each heavy steel rail by hand. Workers placed the rails on wooden ties and hammered steel spikes into place to hold the rails. Then the workers moved on and they placed more ties. They hauled more rails and they drove more spikes. This might sound familiar for us reading The Dreamer right now, knowing that Father is a conductor for the railroad and he's currently on a project where they're expanding the railroad. So here's a map showing us the Transcontinental Railroad going from Baltimore, Maryland, to Omaha, Nebraska, to Promontory Point in Utah, to San Francisco and Sacramento, going across the continent. Okay, here is where the Continental Railroad was completed here at Promontory Point up in Utah on May 10th, 1869. Just a few short years after the Civil War ended. There were different crews of laborers. For one long section of the railway line, a crew started in Omaha, Nebraska. This crew built the railway heading west. The other crew started in Sacramento, California. This crew went east, so they're building towards the same destination. One crew going west, one crew going east. It seemed like an impossible job, but the two armies of workers laid mile after mile of track. For 6 years, the work progressed. Finally, on May 10th, 1869, the two railroads met, and this place was Promontory Point, Utah, where they laid the golden spikes, saying that they were complete with the Transcontinental Railroad. All right, we see a vocabulary term, so before we get into dividing the line, we have a minute. A minute is a unit of measure equal to 1/60th of a degree of latitude or longitude. Okay, so you know there's 60 minutes in an hour. Well, when we're talking about minutes in measuring compasses, that's 1/60th between 1 degree and 2 degrees. Okay, so dividing the lines. Where on earth is Promontory Point? Well, its exact location is 41 degrees and 38 minutes north, 112 degrees and 30 minutes west. You've studied latitude and longitude. You know about degrees. But what are the extra numbers in the coordinates? The extra numbers are called minutes. The first coordinate of Promontory Point is 41 degrees and 38 minutes north. That is short of 41 degrees. 38 minutes north. Recall, parallels of latitude are 69 miles apart. Meridians are also miles apart in most places. Sometimes map makers want to be able to pinpoint spots between parallels of latitude and between meridians of longitude. So they divide degrees into smaller units. They are 60 minutes in 1 degree. When writing the coordinates, they use the symbol, this apostrophe, to stand for minutes. So 38 minutes is read as 38 minutes. So here we have a map of the United States. I know it's a little shy, but here is Promontory Point in Utah, and these are all territories at this time. They haven't become official states of the United States just yet. But this map shows us our degrees of longitude and our degrees of latitude So we can figure out that 41 degrees and 38 minutes and 113 degrees is where Promontory Point is at the top of the Great Salt Lake. Remember, minutes of latitude and longitude are not units of time. Instead, they are units of space. You can't assume that because 2 points are 2 minutes apart in latitude that it would take you 2 minutes to get from one to the other. The coordinates of Promontory Point at 41 degrees and 38 minutes north, 112 degrees and 30 minutes west, you can use these coordinates to find the location of Promontory Point on a map. You know that the latitude measures distance north or south of the equator. So the coordinate that ends with north for the north or south is the latitude. So north or south, those are your lines of latitude, your horizontal rings that run parallel across the earth. Okay? And that would be 41 degrees and 38 minutes north. Longitude indicates the location east and west of the prime meridian. So the 112 degrees and 30 minutes west is your longitude. Okay? Where parallels and meridians cross. Look at the map back on page 27, which shows the United States in 1869. You will recognize most of the states. However, many of the states west of the Mississippi River have not yet been formed. The government called these places territories. Somewhere out in the territories is Promontory Point. Can you find it? If we look back here at page 27, I've already done this experiment where we look at what would become Oklahoma, what would become New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, and this red dot, according to our key, is where Promontory Point is, right here in the middle. Okay? This map shows parallels and meridians every 5 degrees. See if you can locate the coordinates for Promontory Point. First, look along the west side of the map. You won't find 41 degrees and 38 degrees north, so you locate the parallel of latitude that is closest to it. You use rounding to either round up or round down to the closest degree of latitude. Okay? And that would be the 40-degree north parallel. The place you're looking for will be 1 degree and 38 minutes north of this parallel. Think about it this way. There are 5 degrees between each parallel shown on the map. So 1 degree is less than half of the distance between the parallels. Estimate or carefully guess where that place is. Put your index finger there. Now look at along the northern area of the map. Locate the meridian of longitude closest to 112 degrees and 30 minutes west, which once again, this exact meridian won't be shown. But by rounding 112 degrees and 30 minutes west, we'll be about halfway between 110 degrees and 115 degrees meridians. Put your right index finger on this meridian. With your 2 fingers still on the map, move them toward each other following the parallel and meridian that they are marking. The place where your 2 fingers meet, where the meridian and parallel cross, is Promontory Point. Now look at the map and find Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha is located at 41 degrees 18 minutes north and 95 degrees 57 minutes west. Compare the coordinates of Omaha and Promontory Point. You can see that the railroad went a long way west, but it only went a tiny bit north. It only traveled about 20 minutes north, but it covered a lot more distance going west from 95 to 112. So if I go back to my map, demonstrate, here's 40 degrees north, here's about 110, 115, and where I'm supposed to be will be Promontory Point. Omaha, Nebraska, where they started, not moving too far north or south, but heading a long distance west. Okay. Oh, skipped that. Finding an exact location. The Transcontinental Railroad linked the eastern United States with the West Coast. Even earlier, we had the Pony Express, which was the way mail was sent across the Wild West. We read a brief article about this back in November, in which we were trying to understand a little bit more about the western United States and the early dates there. Riders of the Pony Express rode on horseback, carried the mail along the Pony Express route. They changed horses about every 10 miles. After 100 miles, a rider handed the mail to another rider. The new rider carried it for another 100 miles, and the route ran from St. Joseph, Missouri to Sacramento, California. It was almost 2,000 miles long. Mail took about 10 days to get from one end to the other, with about 20 different riders and about 200 different horses along that way. Today, there's the Pony Express Museum in St. Joseph. There you can learn all about the Pony Express. You can see pictures of the riders. You can also learn about the dangers that they faced. Let's imagine that your parents or relatives have agreed to take you to the museum. But first, you have to find out where St. Joseph, Missouri is located. Remember, you can use computers and apps on your phone to find this information, but it is also useful to know the skills for finding this kind of information in other ways. To find St. Joseph, you should start with a book of maps called an atlas. An atlas has an index, and you can look for an example index on page 31. So, 2 new vocabulary terms to remember. An atlas is a book of maps. So not just one map, but it might have a whole bunch of different maps for maybe the United States, or a whole bunch of different maps for North America, a whole bunch of different maps for Europe, a whole bunch of different maps for a particular city. An atlas is a collection of maps. Also the Greek god, known for standing with the earth on his shoulders. But I digress. Next up is our index. An index is an alphabetical list of names or places that appear in a book that usually includes the pages on which the name appears. So its index for an atlas is kind of a lot like your list of chapters for a book. It tells you what page to turn to find those chapters. Okay, so up here we have our example of an index that can be found in an atlas. And here they're all listed in alphabetical order. We have St. George, Utah, St. James, Missouri, St. Johnsbury, Vermont, St. Joseph, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, St. Paul, Minnesota. And it tells you what page to find it on, and it will tell you the latitude and the longitude. Okay, so we're looking for St. James, Missouri, which houses the Pony Express Museum. It is located on page 111 of this atlas. It is located at 37 degrees and 99 minutes north, so almost 38 degrees, but the precise one is that it is a little less than 38 degrees. It is located on the longitude of 91 degrees and 61 minutes west. This shows the coordinates for St. Joseph. It also shows the page where you will find the map in which St. Joseph appears. Oh, I'm sorry. There were a lot of saints on this page. I went to St. James. We're looking for St. Joseph, so page 121, 39 degrees, 77 minutes north, 94 degrees, and 85 minutes west. Okay, so using road map coordinates, let's take a closer look at St. Joseph, not James. Mr. Chambers already made that mistake, St. Joseph, Missouri, to learn about different types of coordinates that are used on road maps. Imagine that you are on a sightseeing trip with your family. Since you are such a map expert, you have been given the map. Your task is to find the Pony Express Museum on a map of St. Joseph. Instead of looking all over the map, start with the road map index. This is like the index in a book. It lists all the places shown on the map. It also gives you their coordinates. The index gives you these coordinates, C2. Well, that doesn't sound like latitude or longitude, C2? Well, if you're puzzled, these are different coordinates from latitude and longitude. Many local highway maps give coordinates as letters and numbers. They are simpler to use on maps of smaller areas, because the whole town of St. Joseph could have the same lines of latitude and longitude telling you their coordinates, but precise minutes between each one might be different. So on this grid, you might break it down into your A's, your B's, your C's, and your D's. And break it down into your 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. So on this list, I'm looking for the Pony Express Museum. And because it's big text, they're going to use this line to move it away, but this purple dot will represent where the Pony Express Museum is. And if I draw my eyes from C, which represents the relative longitude, or C, which is our parallel lines, C, 2, we'll draw our lines here, and it will be right in the middle of that C2 on the map. So if you look at the map of St. Joseph above, notice that the letters run down the side of the map, while the numbers run along the top. You're looking for the coordinate C2, you put one finger up top, one finger on the side, draw them together, and somewhere close to where your fingers meet will be the Pony Express Museum. You have a great time at the Pony Express Museum. Your mother decides she wants to see the Albrecht Kemper Art Museum afterwards, but she can't find it on the map. Can you? The map index will tell you that the coordinates are A4, but how will you get there? And about how far is it from the Pony Express Museum? So now if we take our knowledge of coordinate systems and map scales, we can figure out about how far Pony Express Museum is from Albrecht Kemper Museum. Okay, so Albrecht Kemper is A4, so we draw a line from A, draw a line from 4, bring our fingers together, and it will be there, the Albrecht Kemper Art Museum. Okay, and here you can figure out what roads you'd best take to get there. Probably Mitchell Avenue to Noyes Boulevard to Frederick Avenue to get you there. And our scale is about 1/2 mile for approximately an inch. So if I'm drawing my lines, trying to trace out the perfect route to get to Albrecht Kemper, I might go from Mitchell, that's 1/2 mile, continue on to Noyes, that's 1 mile, and then I might travel up and approximately 1/2 an inch, that's 1/2 mile. Up here is another one, 1/2 mile, and it's right there. So it's about 2 miles away from your Pony Express Museum. Okay, so in your questions, there might be another sample map where you have to identify the coordinates of a particular thing, whether it's in a theme park or in a town. Try to figure out the exact location of something you're looking for. So with that being said, you do have 5 to 10 questions to answer on Google Classroom. Thank you so much for spending your time to watch this video to understand a little bit more about how we read and interpret maps to find the information we need. Thank you so much. Stay awesome, and I will talk to you real soon.